So you want to edit your own book. Is it a good idea? I have chosen to edit my own book, but that's because I have an awesome team called my family who either reads a lot or is also a teacher like I am, or has also written a book, and they know a lot about that stuff too. So I am really lucky because one, I'm super broke. So my first recommendation is if you really don't know that much about editing, I would find an editor. Now, this isn't going to cure everything for your specific book. So I don't want you publishing your book and being like, oh, well, I watched that one video and it said this will fix all. You need to have your own critical eye for your own book. Okay? These are just some things that I see all the time and I would like to not see when I get something to edit. But if you're thinking about editing for yourself, here we go. The first thing is, please get rid of filler words. Now, what are filler words? Filler words are words that slow the reader down, especially in something that's like really fast paced. For example, when you use the word suddenly, for the most part, you don't need it. It just is an extra word to get through when you're trying to make something happen suddenly. I tried to stand up and high five my friend. You don't need to, I tried. I stood up to high five my friend. You know? Also, up. When you see up, like I stood up, I stood. There's no reason to have an extra word, especially if you're looking to send it to an editor. All those filler words you take out, that's money that you're saving. Also, down most of the time are filler words. Just, completely, absolutely, immediately. Oh my gosh, there are so many words that you really just don't need. I really hope you take this into consideration, especially completely, I feel like, and immediately. Those are words that you just don't need. And it has a bigger impact when you don't have those words. The reader gets to what you want to say a lot faster. And it's amazing the impact. Just try it, guys. Sarcastically or sardontically. Okay. If you are writing dialogue to the best of your abilities, the reader's gonna get that it's sarcastically. Or you can add something like his eyelids heavied, or like a look that you give when you know you're being sarcastic, like a smirk or something. You know what I mean? So you don't need to write that. If you write that, then you're probably having issues. Take out filler words. The next one is showing and telling. Right off the bat, nobody wants to read. Okay, there are a few people that like to just read telling paragraphs, but most of us don't. So when you start off by explaining the land here is from the east side and then the royals on the west side didn't like the east side, there's a way that you can put that in more naturally, like having a character interact with their environment and saying, oh, I'm touching east wall. I almost got burned because it's bad, whatever. You can have people talking to each other so that we feel like we're part of the conversation of slowly discovering that there is some sort of conflict between the two sides, or the tribes or whatever. Don't go into a first paragraph ready to just give the background to the reader. Because one, we're not going to remember it. Two, we're not invested in your characters enough to care about their background. And three, it gets boring to read. Like the first thing writers go to is, here's a bunch of background, please memorize it, come back when you're ready. That's not our job, is to memorize it. It's your job as a writer to naturally give us that information, either through interacting with your environment, having conversations, that kind of thing. Something more natural where the reader is discovering things almost at the same time that your characters are discovering things. That's when it's gonna be fantastic writing. Let's just have an example, shall we? Freddie doesn't like me because he thinks that I'm just too much, okay? Instead of just telling the reader, have Freddie come over and give some sort of banter that shows the reader and lets the reader discover that, oh, those two don't like each other. Does that make sense? Okay, moving on. Another thing is repetitive words. So I will highlight words that I see all the time. It's funny because when you're writing your own work, because I'm an author too, you don't notice that. So what I do is I put it in a text analyzer. This is going to be your best friend, okay? It'll tell you how many times you've said a word or a phrase. People don't want to use the word said. And then people were saying, oh, but said is good. It's okay. Because you kind of want to skip over the fact that this person said something. It's fine. Highlight all the times you've said said. If you have too many highlighted words from the same word, you're going to want to get rid of it. Why? Because it's boring. It's going to get repetitive. The reader's going to start dragging their eyes across the page. Either read it out loud, read your work out loud. If you don't want to read it out loud, get a speech to text. You can hear if you're saying words too many times. So do that. I would like to say, as an editor, I am very critical of the very first word that you present to your reader, because that could either make or break somebody reading it. If it's not interesting enough, or if it's too boring or whatever, that might be as much as you have to reel them in. If you're not really sure what to do for like a first line, put all your first lines on some sort of like poll and have people rate it from how interesting it is. Now, for a chapter, I'm going to talk about the first chapter, because first chapter as an editor, you always got to look at that super, super keenly, because sometimes all you get is a sentence, but sometimes all you get, if you're lucky, is a chapter. I always say, start your stories on the day that character's life changes, because everything before that is going to be their normal routine. I don't want to know that that person drank tea and then took a hike and then talked to their mom for a little while, even though it's like, oh, I had to know that she was sick or something. Like, there are exceptions, of course. You are the author. You tell the story the way that you want the story to be told. That is the number one thing. Next one is get beta readers. There's a bunch of groups that you can join on like Facebook and Instagram that you can ask people to just look at your book, give you like harsh, real, honest feedback. Get beta readers for those developmental. Like, a lot of beta readers aren't very keen to all of the, technical grammar stuff, and some might be if you're lucky. Also, pay attention to your tenses. If you're writing in present tense, everything needs to be in present tense. If you're writing in past tense, everything needs to be in past tense. Okay. Point of view. Check that you're not switching point of views. Now, if you're that type of writer, then make sure it's consistent through your entire writing. But if you are writing from, let's say, Christine's point of view, in her chapter, we shouldn't be suddenly hearing about what, Lenny's point of view is. Look up your grammar. Be as thorough as possible. Especially dialogue grammar. Know where your commas go. Know where to put capitals and lowercase. Anything you're not sure about, look it up. So that's like the biggest thing, is like editors will find those things for you, but if you want to do it yourself, you really need to know your grammar. So spend time on the internet. There's nothing to be ashamed of researching your grammar. How did I learn? I researched my grammar, and it took years, but I got it down to a science. Science. Let's talk about semicolons. You know that thing? Yeah, that thing. Rule of thumb. Use maybe one in an entire manuscript, okay? Now, obviously, that is your choice. I will make peace with it. I personally don't like semicolons. Normally, those things can be solved with a hyphen or a dash, or period or comma. There's no reason to have those in there unless you're like using multiple lists within a list. That's usually when you'll see semicolons. Why don't your readers like semicolons? Because they're really abrupt and it pulls the reader out of your story. And most of the time it's not even used correctly. I would limit yourself to maybe one semicolon. Like if you're gonna do anything from the list that I gave you, like this, that's what I want you to do, okay? Maybe one semicolon, if not none, in your entire writing, okay? Oh, all caps. If you're reading a professional work, you are rarely going to see all caps with an exclamation point because it's very aggressive writing. And most of the time, you don't end up getting your point across as impactfully as you want with all caps. If you want to use all caps, which I don't suggest, either use all caps or an exclamation point. Do not use both. And by the way, guys, if you need an editor, I know I said that I'm only a copywriter, but now that I'm editing, I actually do a lot more than that. I find myself getting invested in your books, and I do give you as much feedback as possible, including plot-wise, but I have a post-apocalyptic romance coming out. It's called Mar King on November 1st, 2020. That's this year, guys. I don't know if you forgot because of the quarantine, like it feels like years, but it's still 2020, guys. I would appreciate a pre-order or an order of my paperback, or, you know, put it on your want to read list on Goodreads. If you want to check that out, it is of course in the description below. Do the like thing, do the comment thing, do the bell thing, and the, you know, subscribe thing.